So in hindsight of the previous video, my editing wasn't as good as I imagined, and certain scenes were out of order. My main gripe comes with the sections I'm trying to speed up, like the grinding that I've been doing in the beginning sections of the game. Anytime I try to speed up the scene, it jumps to a random number and it makes the video slower. Additionally, I was getting frustrated and impatient to get on to the next video, but this time around I want to improve on it. Where we last left off, I had defeated the Cerulean gym leader Misty and gained the Cascade badge. After helping Bill and defeating the gym, the officer in front of the house will move out of the way, allowing you to pass through a ransacked house in order to get to Vermilion City. Whether you want to or not, you have to fight the rocket grunt that has the TM dig. The battle wasn't so difficult, only had my Spearow and Geodude take out his 2 Pokemon. Now having defeated the rocket grunt, we now have access to our big helper in our quest to complete the Pokedex. The daycare man on Route 5. For the time being, I left Ekans in his care while I continued grinding. In my time on Route 5, I came across a Meowth, but unfortunately Spearow's Fury attack took it down before I could even attempt to catch it. Thankfully I came across another one. I don't think I mentioned this before, but there isn't really much to say on the grinding. It's just running around in the grass, finding and battling Pokemon. A lot of the Pokemon in this route are close to level 15, so there's a moderate amount of experience to get in preparation for the next area. This goes on for a while, and while I could just go down to the route outside of Vermilion and battle the trainers there, and then pick up the Versus Seeker like I mentioned, I wanted to make sure I got through the 4 trainers that will stop you in your tracks. And yes, I'm aware of the couple by the water, but that battle isn't triggered by them looking at you. You have to interact with them in order to battle. Additionally, it also helps get Ekans leveled up. To explain the daycare to anyone that is confused or don't know, for every step you take directly after you deposit a Pokemon, that's how much experience it gets. Put it simply, 1 step equals 1 experience point. I suppose that's what makes the step counter so helpful in Generation 4, along with how many steps taken to hatch an egg. If you're playing this on an emulator, you could find some way to add a step counter to help keep progress of how much experience a Pokemon in the daycare gets. Simply take however much experience it needs to get to a level you want, and then pick it up at that level, or a bit before, so you can finish up battle with it and level it up to evolve. Anyways, along with my rambling, Spearow evolved into Fearow. Now, as I mentioned before, I wasn't gonna have Fearow be a part of the Hall of Fame for my journey, so I set him aside. The next evolve was Pidgey, going from a tiny bird Pokemon to a bird Pokemon. What an improvement. Once again, after all that, it was back to grinding, primarily to make sure that the Pokemon are caught up with each other. That way I don't end up having a low-level Pokemon go up against a higher-level Pokemon. Helps make sure that I'm not becoming lazy and relying on only one Pokemon. Not that anyone playing through the game with only one Pokemon is lazy in this regard, it is a challenge that players will go through. Anyways, after depositing Fearow into the box, I went back to Route 24 in order to find myself an Abra to catch. Venus knows sleep powder, so it does come down to whether or not it's able to hit the Pokemon. It did fail at first, but after finding another I managed to put it to sleep and catch it. I will admit, I got lucky that it didn't wake up the next turn and disappear, so small victories. Abra, who would later become known as Spooner, is level 11, which only knows teleports as its move. It does learn more as time goes on, like Confusion, so with him caught, I got back to grinding up my Pokemon. Since I had yet to reach Vermilion, I'd used the trainers to help level it up, using a tried and true method of sending Abra out first, and then swapping to a better Pokemon. But this wasn't going to be used until I got my Pokemon caught up. With them finally caught up to level 20, I took the underground path to head to Vermilion City. At the head of the path, there's a girl that will trade a male Nidoran for a female Nidoran, something I mentioned when I first got the Pokemon in the last episode. Stepping out onto Route 6, I used the method of swapping out my lead Pokemon against the trainers here, and finally stepped foot into the 3rd city of the game. At this point, Abra was only 6 levels away from being caught up with the others, and it was here in Vermilion that we have a few things to do. There's the Pokemon Fan Club, whose president will give us a bike voucher to redeem at the bike shop in Cerulean City. There's also the Fishing Guru, who gives us an old rod, which is only good for catching Magikarp. At level 5. And then there's the previously mentioned Versus Seeker, which will let us challenge trainers again. There's a return trip needed to be done, so stocking up on some Pokeballs, I fished for a Magikarp and I caught it. I began my return trip to Cerulean, starting with using the Versus Seeker to get an understanding of how it works. The only other time I've ever used the Versus Seeker was when I played Pokemon Platinum, But back then, when I saw that it only challenges trainers again, I didn't bother with it and thought it was a useless item. Oh boy, how I was wrong. So running back, I picked up the bike and put Magikarp with the daycare man so that it would level up above level 20. So all that was left for the Carp was to give it a rare candy so it would evolve into Gyarados. After giving Magikarp to the daycare man, I came back to Route 6 to continue leveling up Abra. Now there are a few other things to do here in Vermilion. Diglett's Cave takes you from Vermilion back to Pewter City, but in order to actually step into Pewter requires a Pokemon that knows Cut. The only other item needed at the end of this is the Flash HM, which makes Rock Tunnel easy to maneuver through. I walked into Diglett's Cave, but only to catch Diglett. I could also spend a long time there to find a Dugtrio, but I decided that I would level it up for it to evolve. So it's being put in the box for later level raising. I stepped out onto Route 11 to battle the trainers there. They're either youngsters or gamblers and engineers. At the end of the route is the building that would take us to the easternmost part of Kanto. During my battles, Abra finally evolved into a Kadabra, as well as learning Confusion. Now that he knows a psychic move, I can now use him to battle against the bug trainer on Route 6, the first bug trainer you come across. He has 2 Weedles and a Caterpie, making Kadabra a good Pokemon to use against his Pokemon since Weedles are part poison. I'm not sure I stated this before, but battling Pokemon trainers here are better than battling with wild Pokemon as they give more experience. Getting back to the building at the end of Route 11 is a viewing platform that leads to Route 12, but the one thing keeping us from getting to that route is a large Snorlax that's sleeping there. But upstairs in the viewing platform is one of Professor Oak's aides, who you come across in your travels to reward you for your progress on the Pokedex. There's stuff like the mentioned HM Flash, an item finder, and the useful EXP share. After I battled the trainers on the route, and since I've been hard at work catching as many Pokemon as I could, I decided to go and claim my prize, which was the item find. Oh! You're kidding me! Okay, there's no need to worry, because there's still new Pokemon to catch here on Route 12. I know this since I actually used this Pokemon in my yellow run, so yeah, I didn't find him. My options ahead of me were to either search for a Drowsy that was in Route 12, try and find a Dugtrio in Diglett's Tunnel, or simply try and get some of the other Pokemon evolved to finish it off. With the prospect of Geodude evolving at level 25, I decided to go ahead and go onto SSN to battle the trainers. So this began my meticulous trip through the ship, battling any trainer that I could and getting all of my Pokemon leveled up to level 25 in preparation for Blue and Lieutenant Surge. There's nothing too interesting about this, since there was nothing of note that happened on the ship. Of the trainers, there's a mixture of gentlemen, sailors, fishermen, and so forth. This is also the first place where you can get a Great Ball, which is a higher level Pokeball that has a better chance to catch Pokemon, with the only other one being an Ultra Ball. On the topic of Pokeballs, anyone from Ruby or Sapphire, or even Emerald for that matter, will notice that there's a distinct lack of Pokeballs like the Quick Ball, Repeat Ball, etc. Well, that's because they can only be bought at a shop at the Sevi Islands, which is updated until you finish the story beats on that island, which is something I needed to do in order to finish up the dex, specifically a business on 4 Island. Playing through these games, I haven't gotten the chance to play Pokemon Heart Gold or Soul Silver, and the Johto region is the one that has really interesting Pokeballs, like the Lure Ball, Heavy Ball, and the Moon Ball. But as much as the different kinds of Pokeball are useful in certain scenarios, like with the Nest Ball and the Dusk Ball, I'm the kind of person that would probably default to using the regular kinds of Pokeballs. Mainly because the anime, not Origins, always use the regular Pokeball to catch Pokemon, with the exception of the Alola series. When it comes to certain Pokemon, regardless of who it is, I believe that a Pokemon that's going to be your partner is a Pokemon you want to catch in a regular Pokeball. Although the Luxury Ball is the Pokeball to use to quickly raise a Pokemon's friendship to you. Although I have been the kind of person to try and catch a Legendary in a Pokeball. Anyways, after battling everyone I could on SSN, I headed up to the captain's quarters where I took on Blue once again in order to get past him and obtain Cut. The battle this time around wasn't so difficult since I knew that his first Pokemon was going to be a Pidgeotto. So getting by him and helping the captain of the SSN, I obtained the HM and headed out, watching the ship continue on its maiden voyage. But before I go and take on the gym leader, I make my way through Diglett's Cave in order to pick up the Flash HM and check out the area behind the tree. And it's here in this area that we are introduced to another kind of in-game trade available, which gives us a Pokemon you can't find in the wild, a Mr. Mime. And I figured, while we're here, I'd head back to Route 3 and catch another male Nidoran in order to trade with the girl at the beginning of Underground Path. And we weren't done in terms of in-game trades. The trade for Mr. Mime requires an Abra, so back to Cerulean City. Thanks to Venus' sleep powder, I was able to hurl as many Pokeballs as I could. I traded the new male Nidoran I caught and got the female Nidoran, and then went through Diglett's cave again in order to get Mimian, Mr. Mime. So with the new Pokemon, I got the item finder, and then took on Lieutenant Surge. This gym is one of the most frustrating ones in the series. There are 15 garbage cans in the gym, and you need to find the 2 cans that have a secret switch. When you find one, you better hope you find the other one. If you fail, the locks reset, and the secret switches, well, they change their location. You'd likely spend a lot of time trying to find the 2 switches, so after agonizingly going through the gym challenge, I finally confronted Lieutenant Surge. His Pokemon are over level 21, and his Raichu is level 24. But his entire team was sweep on my recently evolved Graveler. And thanks to him pulling off some good magnitude attacks, I defeated Lieutenant Surge and got myself the Thunder Badge. We end this segment of our journey with 3 badges and 32 entries in the Pokedex. We started this off with some level grinding in order to get our team caught up and to level 20. But we end this with the Versus Seeker, something that could help catch up any new Pokemon that we want to add to our team. We caught some new Pokemon and got our first taste at what a trade would look like if we were to have the wireless adapter. Now at this point I could just go ahead and trade over my Graveler and Kadabra in order to get Golem and Alakazam, but for this playthrough, I decided not to. As I played through this game, I wanted to see how far I could reasonably go without having to trade over the Pokemon from my previous game. Basically, getting any Pokemon I could in a regular playthrough. Which means no trade evolution, no version exclusive Pokemon, and no high level Pokemon to help me get through the game. It definitely makes the playthrough feel more genuine?
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like below and consider subscribing to the channel. I'm sorry this video wasn't as long as the first one, but I wanted to keep this series as short and compact as possible so that people don't lose interest over an hour-long video. Plus, it's a lot easier for me to go through and edit these videos. If you haven't already, I'd highly suggest checking out the other content that I do on this channel. And if I can just take this moment to, just speak my mind and not try and structure it as if I'm reading from a script. This is, as I've likely mentioned before, this is probably the first time that I've been passionate to something, and that this is something that I've been like hard at work doing, and I haven't been feeling that in the I guess the past few months, especially with when I was playing Sniper Elite or 13. They were games that they may seem fun and interesting, but I just didn't really feel it in my heart to continue and play. I was also particularly weren't really enjoying it. Sniper Elite was boring to me. 13 was getting frustrating, especially in one section of the game. And I don't want to like keep hanging on to that feeling. I think it's best that I like play a game that I'm sure I can beat, or that I have beaten before, and the thing that I need to like focus on or something that I do for games that I've beaten is just make it more difficult, so that it's not like, oh yeah, here we go, so let's go ahead and get into Hyrule Field. After this we can go like do all this. No. If it ever comes to those games, I definitely want to up the difficulties, to try and make it more interesting. So, if you guys, I want to get into that. One idea for a stream that I have is, fighting Demise again, but this time with a challenge, So, I want to do that. I also want to play through, I want to play through. I'll play through some Zelda games. This is what this channel's called, a Zelda Master 64. So how about I do that? How about I record some Zelda gameplay and upload that to the channel? A game that I have fun playing. And I might, redo Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and all that. But yeah. So thank you guys again, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.